We're going to make this incredible Mississippi pot roast. It is so delicious, and you're going to just love this. This is so simple to make. With pepperoncinis and onions and chuck roast and gravy, you can't go wrong here. In my case, today I used egg noodles, but you can certainly use mashed potatoes or rice or whatever you like, but you're going to love this. Absolutely incredible. Enjoy. To start off with, we're going to need a chuck roast. This is about a 4.7 pound piece of pot roast, but we need to cut it, since we're going to do this in the Instant Pot, to sizes that'll allow us to sear it in the Instant Pot. So I want to cut this into, I think if I cut it in half, that'll fit at the bottom of the Instant Pot for the searing. But then when I go to put them back in, it may not fit. So I'm going to actually cut it this way first. Again, I'm trying to think of how I'm going to fit this into my Instant Pot. So I'm going to put it in chunks like this. And then that, maybe in thirds. Yeah, that'll work. And then I can sear those off in the Instant Pot. So let's get over there and get started with searing it. So to get started, we're going to turn the saute button on. And we want to get that up good and hot. And then we're going to season just with some kosher salt and pepper. And then we'll put those inside of the Instant Pot. So now we have it on saute. I'm going to just take some vegetable oil and put a little bit on the bottom. This is try to help from getting it to not stick too much. It's going to stick some, but that's okay. We're going to be able to deglaze that with some onions. So to get started though, that'll heat up. I'm going to take some kosher salt and salt these beautiful pieces of chuck roast on every side. This is so we can get a nice sear and a bark or a crust off of the chuck roast. And it's going to flavor it as well. There's a lot of meat, but we'll have a lot of leftovers. And some pepper. Making these smaller pieces like this makes it easier. A little different, you know, when you saw my other video, when I did this inside of the Dutch oven, I just did the whole chuck roast. So now we can go ahead and put these in. I can probably fit 3 of them in there. And we'll let those saute. I'm going to get them brown on all sides. Okay, you can see they're getting browned. I got them browned on every side. So I can go ahead and put these back in on the plate. Get those other 2 on here. Of course, they're not done. I mean, you're not going to be able to eat those because they're not cooked all the way through. So we now need to just brown these or sear off these last two. But those are ready to go into the pressure cooking process. But we'll come back when these are all done and show you how we deglaze this with onions. All right, so we now have all 4 pieces seared. So we can take those out, put them on another plate, and then we just go ahead and add our onions. And as those onions heat up, they're going to give off water, and that water will serve to deglaze the bottom of our pot. Kind of helps to have a wooden spatula scraper to scrape the bottom. We just have to wait for those onions to give off water, and then we'll be able to deglaze that. So you can see that the water is coming off of that, and if I just scrape it a little bit, it'll start to come off. The fond comes off the bottom of the Instant Pot. And that's goodness, because that's a lot of flavor, and you want to get that fond scraped off the bottom and deglaze your Instant Pot. It takes a little time, so don't worry. It'll come off. Okay, now that that's deglazed, it's time to put in some garlic. And I'm going to use this minced garlic in a jar. Maybe cheating, but it works all right. And we want 2 tablespoons of that. A little bit more. You want to stir that in. That only needs to do that for about a minute. Still see some fond there, but that's all going to come off once I get some beef broth in here. All right, so now I got 1.5 cups of beef broth. And like I said, that's going to help to continue to deglaze the bottom of the pot. Okay, now that we got that going good, I've got to add 2 tablespoons of brown sugar. So there's 1 tablespoon, 2 tablespoons of brown sugar. And to stay true to Mississippi pot roast, we're going to put in our Greek peppers. And I'm using about 1/2 cup, a little more than 1/2 cup of the juice from the Greek peppers, or the pepperoncinis. So here's 1/2 cup of pepperoncini juice. Stir that in. Let that all get happy. And now we also have to add 2 packages of ranch dip mix. I'm using Hidden Valley, but you're going to add 2 of these into our sauce. There's 1. There's 2. And we mix that in. And let that get happy with the rest of the flavors. That beep means my saute ended, so I'm going to turn it back on. And let's see. We have to add the peppers, the pepperoncini peppers, but we also want to put the meats back in place. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my camera over. And here's where we get our peppers. These are not spicy. In fact, when you think, seeing all these peppers going here and the pepper juice, that this is going to be a very spicy pot roast, it is not. It just cooks away. You can put the whole jar in or half the jar, whatever you like, but I like to take the stems off. But I'm going to put them in there whole. I'm not going to cut them up. The stems are not easy to eat, so they're tough to chew. So I'm going to take those off. So I'm going to take 3, 4, 5 of them. I'm going to go ahead and throw that into the pot. And we can start to add our chuck roast that's been seared off back into the pot. I know this is a lot of meat, and you're kind of wondering, how are you going to fit that all in there? It'll fit. It'll fit. Not in one layer, but it'll fit. And we don't want to lose that juice. And now we can also add the rest of our peppers. And a little bit of juice that's there. But then another magical ingredient is a half a stick of unsalted butter. Now, I've seen some recipes for Mississippi pot roast where they put a full stick of butter, and part of me says, oh, every good Southern recipe starts with a stick of butter, but I'm just going to put a half a stick of butter in. You can do what you want. I'll clean up my seal. And now I'm going to set the pressure cooking. I can put the lid on. And I'll show you how I'm going to set this. So we're going to go to pressure cook. And we're going to do it on high. And we're going to do for an hour and 10 minutes. Hour and 10 minutes. And then we'll do a slow release of another 10 minutes once that comes up, once it's done cooking. So see you in an hour and 10 minutes. It's so funny. You can see my microphone laying right there on the plate, and I forgot to turn it on, so I had to do another audio recording. So now I'm going to try and make my beef broth to thicken up, but instead of using flour, which you'll see is the typical recipe, I'm going to use cornstarch. And so to do that, I need to use 1 part cornstarch to 1 part beef broth. So I'm just going to take that and put it in a measuring cup and mix that up with a fork. So here's the 1 part of cornstarch, and then also 1 part of beef broth. And I just got to mix that up with a fork, and that will then get poured into the Instant Pot. And then as I do that, it's going to thicken up the gravy, and that way we'll have a nice thick gravy. But again, you can use flour and mix that up in there too, but I don't like the taste of the raw flour. I'd rather make cornstarch. So with Mississippi pot roast, it's more traditional to have it with mashed potatoes, maybe potatoes and carrots. But for me tonight, I'm going to have, what do they call this? Egg noodles. So I'm going to boil some egg noodles. We have a lot of gravy, and nothing goes better with egg noodles than lots of gravy. So I've got some boiled salted water, and I'm going to start my egg noodles so that they are ready about the time that I have my pot roast ready. And we'll come back to that. Okay, it's time to do a pressure release on our Instant Pot. Okay, that's dropped. We can go ahead and safely remove our top and remove what should be extremely tender pieces of chuck roast and put them on a plate. They are falling apart, so you have to do that very carefully. So tender with all those wonderful flavors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dip out the peppers, the pepperoncinis, and put those on top, along with, of course, some of the onion. Now, I don't have to get all of it out of there, but look at that. That's a lot of meat on there. I'm going to press saute. I canceled and saute. I want that to come up to a boil. And then I'm going to add my cornstarch and beef broth in order to thicken that up into a nice gravy. Now that that's boiling, I'm ready to add my cornstarch and beef broth. Then I want to stir that up in order to let it thicken. And with that, we should get a nice, thick, delicious gravy. You can see it's already getting so thick. Beautiful. It doesn't take much at all. I'm going to go ahead and hit cancel so it doesn't boil anymore. But that's a beautiful gravy. Okay, it's time for me to take the egg noodles and drain them. Stand that up right. I'm going to add those back into the pot. But I'm going to want to add some butter to that so they don't stick together. So to the egg noodles, I'm going to take maybe a tablespoon of butter and stir that in. If you don't do this, egg noodles will stick together and you want them to separate. So put some butter in there and get them coated so they stick together or don't stick together as much. So let's start with some egg noodles. That one got away from me. And on top of that, we want to put some delicious pot roast. And then on top of that, I want to put some gravy. Let me get a ladle. Putting some nice gravy on top of that. Lots of gravy. And there you have it. Mississippi pot roast with gravy. In our case, today we're having egg noodles. You can also take, of course, some of the pepperoncinis and the onions, put on top of there. And because I had some left over, and that was on purpose because I like to have some fresh pepperoncinis to go with this, much more crispy. And that is so incredibly delicious. It takes pot roast to a whole new level. I hope you enjoyed this video. I want you to try this. You'll not regret it. It's so easy to do. And it comes from, of course, this home cook in Ripley, Mississippi, that came up with this incredible recipe. Enjoy. Thank you. We'll see you in the next video.